Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Transpicuous Views. It is almost Christmas. Oh my God, the 2019 has disappeared. We don't know where it went. I've looked everywhere. I can't seem to find it no matter where I look. It is the 18th of December, and I have with me Cynthia Sue Larson tonight. Cynthia, I'm so glad that you're here.
Glad you're here. I just feel like when you find like-minded people, it's the best gift ever.
That's what we had. So if you missed it, first of all, a little introduction. So if you don't know Cynthia Sue Larson, she's a physicist, and she's written two brilliant books called Reality Shifts and Quantum Jumps, both of which I've got on order right now. And I kind of said to my husband, I'm going to have to break down and just buy the ebooks, because apparently buying books around Christmas time and waiting for the post is just right. December 2nd, Cynthia and I got to meet each other face to face for the first face to face, video to video, while we were interviewing. We're on Brian McFarlane's channel interviewing David Guy Levy, who is the gentleman who created and directed the new movie, The Mandela Effect. And we hit it off because we speak the same language, and it's awesome. So I'm really, we're going to talk Mandela Effect shit, but we're going to talk about the deeper aspects to this. We're really going to kind of get into because you are all about the quantum physics stuff, and that's what I'm really, really excited to get into tonight.
Yes, I'm excited too. And I love your enthusiasm and just the spark you bring to the subject, instead of getting, well, I'm not going to say anything negative, but some people go other places, and I like where you take it.
Well, you know what? Like, the reality is, ha ha ha, pun fully intended, that we have no idea what this reality is. And it's an adventure. Like, every time we kind of open up another box and look inside and go, oh, look at this piece. Oh, this is a really cool piece. Yes. So, you know, you got to enjoy life. And to me, kind of, this is one of my things I love, is the digging to figure it out.
And I like the way this inspires other people to recognize we can all have fun with it. Yes, it can be disturbing, and we can have those moments where it's like, I can't believe this is happening. But I think if you get back to that adventure, then you're back on track.
It is a grand adventure. And I think when you get over and we talked a little bit about this with my group here over the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about this a lot over the last few weeks.
Yes.
When you get to the point where these reality shifts are now coming, that you're no longer stunned by them. You're no longer surprised by them, that you start to go, oh, okay, that's gone. Okay. And what's for dinner tonight? And then it becomes more of an adventure. It's not something to freak out about. It's something to be, ooh, what can I do with this?
Exactly. And I think that's the key, is but it's a process. So people come in at all points. And when they just first discover it naturally, it's pretty disturbing if you notice what's really happening and you recognize the implications. In other words, you're thinking about it.
What the
fuck? I knew you'd say that. Love it.
So, okay, I want back up for a second before we get into this. I want give us a little snapshot of your journey, because you've been at this for way longer than anyone else has. Like,
exactly.
recognizing, hey, reality doesn't seem to be quite what they're telling us. So I'd love you to just kind of like give us a little bio here of that journey that you went on to get here.
Right. It started when I was quite young. I noticed things were not quite what the official version of reality is. So I've been a lifelong observer of this phenomenon, but it had no name, was not recognized in my family. It wasn't talked about. So if anything like that's happening, obviously it's not happening. So, and so I learned to kind of cope and get by with ignore this. But then at a certain point, which was specifically, I could target the date. It was fall 1994. I was 32 years old. I had a Kundalini awakening. That was, I can just pinpoint that moment because there was no going back after that. And I think it was meant to be, if you look at your life as being orchestrated by your high self, making choices with you. So you're not getting dragged along kicking and screaming. It's just that you made some promises you might have forgotten. like you're going to wake up in 1994 kicking and screaming. So,
kicking and screaming. I love it because that pretty much describes most people's experience of that moment of waking up, if you will.
And it's like being born again, because what does a baby do when it's born? There's some kicking and screaming. And so it was like, I never thought of it that way, but now I'm talking to you and it's like, that's perfect. So I'm laughing now. That was not a laughing matter in 1994. I actually thought I might be losing my mind because if you don't know what a Kundalini awakening is, it varies from person to person. In my case, I felt like I was electrified with energy, like I was running all of the energy for New York City through my body. And in other words, I could not sleep and I'd close my eyes. It was still bright. And there were a couple of weeks of this insanity and just instant psychic abilities, knowing things that I had no way of knowing that were happening all around me, like 360-degree vision, could see around my house. Like it was crazy. And I thought, this is just weird and wacky. And I was worried about my sanity. So talked to my brother-in-law, who was a psychologist at the time, and he fortunately pointed me towards shamanism. And then I realized, okay, I'm fine. I got this, even though it seems like the whole world is falling apart. And I did also have I had this mad idea that I could go back to being the way I was. I really did try.
You can go back. I love that.
Nah, it turns out apparently not for me. Apparently I had already made this choice. It would be convenient because then you can kind of blend in and pretend like everything's just normal. We go about our day. Right. So
yeah, that doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way.
So that was the turning point, 1994. And it took me about 5 years to get my website started, which is about reality shifters. And I decided, okay, I'll go public with this. Because what I'm really noticing is things are appearing, disappearing, transporting, transforming. Everything can and will change. And you don't necessarily know when. And you may be the only one that notices. Fortunately, other people are noticing, and then like, okay, good, that's a relief. Or you might see a flip-flop, good, that's a relief. Or you might have some sort of anchor memory, good, that's a relief. So there are things that kind of tell you you're not losing your mind. Otherwise, this can be terrifying, when you see large things appearing, disappearing, transforming, transporting. Really big things that look like they've been there forever. Buildings, big things, instantaneously changing.
So you must have been, and I made this comment during when we were in the interview. I was like, so when everyone kind of started waking up to this to 2015, when it was like all of a sudden everyone on the internet's talking about this, you must have been like, yay, I have people like I talk to now.
And I've had them because when I started the website in 1998, it was on Third Age, and then moved it to its own website in 1999. realityshifters.com. I became sort of that portal, that star, that attractor that can invite people to share their experiences, reassure them you're not going crazy. I'm not crazy. A lot of people would be professionals and they don't want to tell their medical doctors that they work with or their attorneys that they work with or other generals in the military, that whatever. So these are high level people. They're not going crazy. It's a big relief. And then it's everybody from every walk of life. So but now you're right. 2015 is where it really took off. And that is so wonderful for those of us who've been there longer. I'm not the only one, but I was one of the first
No,
ones.
you were one of the first ones. You were kind of one of those people who came out publicly and said it's okay to question your reality.
Yes, exactly. And that was not happening at that time. There weren't a lot of people saying that.
No, no,
But
I mean, not in my world, that's for sure. Not in my world.
and fortunately, I had mentors. There are people like PMH Atwater. She was studying the near-death experience, and she had a book called Future Memory with an entire chapter on reality shifts. So when I found that,
Oh,
I'd already started, I didn't know what to call this. I was calling it reality shifts. That's the same exact phrase that she'd chosen. And that was cool.
oh,
So
that's interesting.
also the 1990s. So yes, so
Hmm.
this does go back a ways, and I'd like to give her credit because she's the first person that really put that in a book. There's one other book it showed up in, which was The Holographic Universe.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh,
So
love that book.
yes, so it's good to have mentors like that, and of course people like Fred Allen Wolf in my life. He's in San Francisco, I'm in Berkeley, so he was definitely a big mentor for me. And Dean Radin is at the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Yep.
So there have been people, and I felt like, okay, I'm not totally alone. Stanley Krippner talking about dreams and shared dreams. So thanks to all of that, I felt like I had a community, even though I was kind of a little bit alone back in the 1990s. But now we're not alone. Now we've got all these beautiful
Oh, whoa.
resources. We're sharing information. Yes.
So when did, it's one thing to look at obviously the shifting of reality because it's there, it's in front of you, you experience it.
Yes.
When did the concept of like really, really looking at quantum physics, because you talk a lot about quantum things like superposition and things like this that we're going, these are, shall we say, in mainstream, this is a relatively new thought concept that's hitting the mainstream. It's really only been the last 2 decades that you've had people talking about quantum reality. So when was it for you? Like, when did you start delving into that aspect or start going, hey, wait, there's something here?
Well, right from the start, because I do have a degree in physics from UC Berkeley. So it was easy for me to put that lens of perception on the phenomena and to start
Ah,
noticing, because I'd see something like, okay, an item just teleported, like I'd have a magazine experience. There it is. It's at my friend's house. They bought the magazine and now I have it, or whatever, or vice versa. That's crazy because, I didn't give the magazine to them and it's moved by itself. And I realized, okay, that reminds me. What does that remind me of? It reminds me of quantum teleportation. And then things like where there might be a bilocation experience, that reminds me of quantum superposition of states. People who are facing an oncoming vehicle, it's coming right at them, and they know they're about to die, and then they're on the other side of it. This happens a lot more than people,
oh,
a lot. And that's quantum tunneling. And so I'm seeing every single quantum weirdness, whether it's spooky action at a distance, you name it. I'm seeing the macroscopic scale match for each one of these, and that's way beyond coincidence. So
when we were on the second when we were talking, you gave a brilliant analogy, and I want you. We'll kind of get into this here when we talk about Mandela effects. And like I said, I don't really like the term Mandela effect. So let's go back to reality shifts, or as I call them, the what the fuck effects. And you talk about anchors, like when you have an anchor memory. And one of the analogies you gave was talking about your peripheral vision. And you
yes.
talked about in martial arts and, the whole question, kidney punches. And I love that because that's one of the ones for me as well. It's like, excuse me, doesn't work anymore. So therefore, if you want, just if you can pull that out, I want to talk on that because that is a really foundational pieces that like that anchor pieces that some people have that disallows them because it's so in their focus. So it disallows them to actually see it, experience it.
You mean if they have the memory that it used to be a certain way, then they're kind of locked into that. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because I feel like that's an advantage when I talk to a martial artist, and I'll run through the usual Mandela effect questions, and they'll be dismissing quite a few. I did this recently with someone. I'm not going to name their name because at some point they may come around. I think they will, but right now we're in that place where they're admitting to these things, and then they're back to, well, but we all might be misremembering. Until I get to, yes, the big one, I just ask, okay, show me where, well, first I ask, about a kidney punch, right? And of course they do. Like, yeah, of course. Okay. And just remind me what that is. And they're like, what kind of idiot are you? But then they remind me what it is. You don't want to strike someone in that area because it could lead to almost instantaneous death.
Yep,
or just
you can kill someone with a kidney punch. Yep.
Yeah, so we don't do that. So then I, of course, ask, where is that? Where would that be? Show on yourself, show on me, whatever. And then they show me where it used to be. And that's the fun part. This is where it gets really fun, because now they're really getting involved in it. They're showing where it used to be. They put their hands there, or they show on me where it used to be. And I said, great, that is where they used to be. And then they look at me like, what do you mean, used to be? And that's where it gets really fun.
And you say, well, take your kidneys, now move them 6 inches farther north.
Exactly.
Under the rib cage.
Yes. And I think that's, I'm going to readjust this. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's the key, because when people realize that they have moved, and that's where I like to point out, it's not just you and me, it's on every single human on the earth. That's like 7.7 billion people instantaneously had a kidney lift. So we didn't have to see the doctor.
Or a plastic surgeon.
Nope. And so what's the value of that? It's huge, because now we're all protected. Our kidneys are up, protected quite a bit more by the rib cage. So even if someone made the mistake of making that so-called kidney punch, now the name makes no sense.
Nope.
No sense at all. What does that mean? You're hitting their lower back, so what? Because the kidneys are safe. They've moved. Yeah.
And because you talked about and this is true, because I've had this conversation with people who are doctors, and who have seen other Mandela effects and have admitted to seeing other ones. And then when you bring up the kidneys or something of that nature, that's a medical change,
yes,
it's not a peripheral anymore. For them, it's right here.
Yes.
And they don't see it.
Let's talk about that, because I just take that for granted. And I can say, this is the part I was explaining, and people listening, I know, let's back up and put this together.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to get to, because this is a foundational piece when we talk about perception.
Very. So you may notice that when people become alive again, they're on the periphery of your awareness. I'm doing this because you can find your peripheral vision by wiggling your fingertips, and you want to move them as far back as you can. That's a vision test. So when it's right about lined up with, that's pretty good for peripheral vision. Right about there, great. But it might vary. When people start working on it, it might be there. But the idea is, when you can you sort of are vaguely aware of something moving, but you'd have to turn your head to see it really closely. That's where most of these reality shifts, what the fuck effect are happening. They're happening out there. And so the way to so when you talk to a doctor, and they will tell you the kidneys haven't moved, and they'll be dead serious. Like, oh yeah. Like, yeah, no, this is my job. I do this. I know for sure. We've always come in through the front when we do a kidney test. We're taking any sort of, they never have any memories of going back to the lower back. If you even bring that up, they'll think, what are you talking about? Because all the time that they've been working on this, it's been the same. And that's a focus of awareness. The focus of awareness, when you look at, like, when you've got laser focus going forward, then this is corresponding to the quantum Zeno effect. Quantum is the first word, Zeno, Z-E-N-O, and effect. So it's QZE for short. It's a legitimate, verifiable quantum physics phenomenon utilized in, I think, a lot of secret programs in the government that you won't see because they want to do thought-controlled light switches and that kind of thing. You can think of it like the watched pot phenomenon or effect. Or the OCD
pot
effect.
Never boils. Exactly.
Yeah. So you can actually lock a quantum state in by being the observer that just doesn't look away. And that would be your specialist. like a doctor that's working in that field every single day. So they're not looking away. That topic is not moving to the periphery of their awareness. And this is why also Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison if you happen to live in South Africa. If you're a South African, probably there's no Mandela effect for you. You know, in a lot of cases, they say, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Thank you for honoring Nelson Mandela, but you guys sound nuts to us, at least about the Nelson Mandela thing. So,
well, it's interesting because this is over the years when we've discussed various physiological changes. I've been, until I heard you talk about this quantum xeno effect, I was just like, oh, snap. This, because you have conversations with people who are very much, they're into the Mandela effect. They totally are with it. They see the changes, etc. And then something will come, and specifically physiology changes seems to be one of those ones, because if you're, for example, I did talking about dental changes, and where these holes, these new holes in the skull, and two good friends of mine who are dental hygienists, so therefore that is their daily focus. They were like,
yes,
those have always been there. And I'm like, no, I've seen x-rays of my own skull. I know that this structure here has changed, and that this structure here has changed. But
right.
because that is their, like you say, their daily focus. That's what they do.
Right.
They don't see it.
Exactly.
Like that does not exist for them.
Right. And that'll be true of any specialty. So for the most part, there are exceptions. You know, anytime you have a rule, then you're going to see exceptions.
Yeah,
so we may hear from people like, hey, I'm a doctor and I see that. Yes, but you're probably a meditating doctor. You're probably someone who spent 10 years in India or something like that. And then it's like, oh, okay. You're not normal.
Well, one of the few, and I think when we were doing the show together, I think I brought it up, was the whole your blood type universal donor.
Yes.
And that was mine in 2015. That was the one that made my head explode. Like, just my husband and I both. He studied biology in university. I was a medic in the military, and had been a medic before I joined the military, and had been used in open line transfusions. I'm O positive. And I had been used in open line transfusions in emergency situations because I was the universal donor. So I have that anchor memory that you talk about. Like, I have an anchor memory. I know that this fucking happened. You can't tell me. When we went public talking about it on shows, and this was in July of 2015.
Yes.
A friend of mine who's a scientist, and he's a researcher, put together a poll, a Mandela effects poll. And I don't know how many questions are on it. Like, I think he's up to now, I think there's over 100 questions on it. But because he's a researcher and he's used to writing research papers, he made specific questions. So for some of the questions, like, Berenstain Bears, whatever. But when it came to, for example, when he said, what is the universal blood type? And then a sub question was like, are you a medical practitioner?
Right.
So that in some way, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a lab, someone who just works in biology in the lab, scientist, etc. And at the time when we were talking about this, so this was like, he had it open for about 3 months. There was over 50,000 people had done the poll. And when it got to that one question, there were over 250 people who answered that question who were medical professionals. And it was an even split. It was like 49% said O negative, and 51% said O positive as the universal blood donor.
Wow.
Now, this is when, like, what to the best of my knowledge, when we talk about physiological changes, this is the only one that I've ever really seen. And I don't know if it's because, even if you're a doctor, the universal blood type donor, it's still a preferential type thing. It's not tonsils. It's like if a doctor is calling for a blood transfusion for someone, they're not going to be calling for they're just going to say universal donor, and whatever they get handed is what gets put up there. They're not, I don't know, but it was stunning the amount of people, and it was almost a 50-50 split. And the amount of people we had who wrote in after that show and went, oh my God, this is like, because I'm a nurse and I know that's not what holy shit.
Now, what was the difference between the medical practitioners versus non-medical? So did they both say the same? Were their answers similar or different?
They were pretty similar. There was a few more because I think he put on it on the thing you had like O positive, O negative, A positive, A negative, and I think he said AB positive. There was like 5 choices.
Okay.
So, but it was, let's say, 90% of people picked either O positive or O negative, and then there was a scattering of people who remembered A positive or A negative, etc. But no, the split was pretty, and it was a question. He made it open so that if you do not guess, we're asking people do not guess. If you don't know, click I don't know. We don't want people just guessing. We want people to say, no, I know it's this or I know it's that. And there was a good portion, like there was like probably 60% of the people who did the quiz actually did answer that question. And it was pretty much a 50-50 split.
So what I'm getting at is, were the non-medical people picking O positive a lot more than the medical people? That's
No, it was about the same. It was the ratios were about the same. They were about the same.
That is interesting. And yeah, it's very interesting actually.
And it's the only example I know of where that, in that, like you say, talking about really head on people, medical people have actually answered that way. Most of the other ones, they don't see it. Like you say, like the kidneys and where they are.
Yeah. Well, another one people might pick up on is, where is the heart, based on blood pressure? Because it used to be on the left side. So if you want your blood pressure to be accurate, you offer your left arm.
Yep.
And so people that are of a certain age that remember that, maybe it doesn't affect children and young people, but a lot of us will, if you just ask which arm do you get your blood pressure checked on, ask it that way. Like either they say doesn't matter or left arm. What they're really answering is, where do you remember the heart used to be?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a way to connect the two. It's an entangled system, where the position of the heart and the blood pressure taking.
Yep.
So that's another good one. And then you can maybe factor that out, see if it's if there's any difference between the medical community.
Yeah. I have no idea, because that was after that. Like that was kind of one of the, that funny how we say that was one of the newer Mandela effects. When you start rating them by year, what year did that one come out?
What's this year's Mandela fashion?
Yeah. But I find that really, really interesting. Like the whole idea of the quantum Zeno effect, it's that observer aspect to it.
Right.
Makes it very, very interesting. And now that when like you and I were saying during the show that there's been so many incredible scientific papers have come out this year.
Yes.
Like, oh my God. And the idea of basically the fact that you can have two that are exactly the same, that have got two different, sorry, Sarah, what was the experiment when they did the double slit experiment with 2 observers?
That was the one done with Edinburgh and Vienna. So they've got scientists at both collaborating together, showing that you can have a simultaneous observation at the same place, same time, both equally trusted observers with 2 equally different, very different answers, which
to the same experiment.
Exact same experiment that's happening right there, right then. So that's showing us that the idea that the assumption that we tend to have, that there is one objective reality, one, like people say, like, that's not my timeline, that kind of thing.
That's what I always say.
But
my reality.
Maybe there is no objective, one correct timeline. So it takes us right there. This is huge.
It is. That one was, and it was the Vienna. There was another one this summer that came out that was talked about quantum time, and the superposition of time, not just
Right.
particles, waves, not like we're talking about how time can also be quantum entangled in that way.
Yes.
This year has been this year of just
Breakthroughs.
crazy breakthroughs.
Yes. And we're going to see that escalating, I would anticipate, thanks to the technology of quantum computing. Anytime that we want something that much, then we go through these, very shocking, world-shaking breakthroughs, because they rattle our foundation of pretty much everything science is built on, actually. It's nothing less than that this time. So we're shaking apart our premise that you can have an objective observer. We've known that's not true for over 100 years, but now it's being thrown in our face.
It's being like concretely proved. Like this is it now. Now we're showing the real proof. Well, it's interesting is that, of course, double slit experiment, you're talking about photons and things, and people, of course,
Yes.
that you get this micro macro that you were talking about at the beginning. Like we're now we can see the experiences in that macro. And there was an interesting experiment, and I'm not sure what year it was. It was relatively in the last 2-3 years, where they were doing the double slit experiment, but they were doing with atoms, like sorry, not atoms, molecules.
Right.
And one of the molecules, the reason it came to my attention is because I work with C60 fullerenes. That's one of the things that I do. And one of the largest molecules out there that they ever did the double slit experiment with was with a C60 molecule. And it behaved exactly like a photon with the observer effect. And I was just like, to comprehend this is like, now we're not talking about micro. We're not talking about these ephemeral little sparkles in the air type thing. We're talking about a physical piece.
Right.
A molecule, a physical molecule, still reacted the same way where the observer affected the outcome of it. This is the first step to really being able to prove that this isn't just in like micro, get an electron microscope to see it. No, this is in like physicality, if you want to use that word, physicality,
Exactly. And I mentioned in my book, Quantum Jumps, this came out in 2013, so 6 years ago. I talk there about, we had entangled diamonds back then in 2013, but every year we're getting a little bit further. We're pushing the edge of what can be done. Can we teleport something bigger? Can we?
Yes. Teleportation, please. Teleportation, please. But okay, and these are some of these experiences, and I was away in November. I had to go help a friend in Spain, and I went away for 10 days. I was in Spain. And it was an entire 10 days of weirdness, like across the board, continuous. And we had several moments during the time we were away that are what I would call time jumping. Where you got into, we got into the car at the airport in Malaga, and we had to drive to Roquetas, and it's a 2.5-hour journey. And we had to drive a half an hour to get outside of Malaga to stop at the cafe where we're all going to get coffee to get us through this car ride. And then I joked and I said, the coffee was so hot, I couldn't drink it. And my little dude's asleep on my shoulder on the back seat, and I'm holding my coffee. And I had literally just finally had a chance to drink it, and it cooled down enough, and we were pulling into Roquetas. I'm like, I did not hold a cup of coffee too hot to drink for 2 hours.
No.
It's not possible. It's not like it was shocking. And I said it was as if the journey was like 45 minutes tops.
Right.
And these type of things are now happening a lot for a lot of people.
That was one of the top experiences reported in the 1990s when I started Reality Shifters. It's
really,
it's an intro level Mandela effect on a personal scale. We're all really good at time shifting. You can call it time travel. Yeah.
Time travel?
We're good at it. That it's like people, they talk about law of attraction. You program a parking space.
I do that all the time.
So this is just like that. It's just as easy as that, And so anytime you're running late, you can practice it. You can just get into, I bet you were in a good groove. You're kind of with friends feeling good, you know. It helps if you're in that sort of a, what I call theta state. You'll get a lot more experiences.
Relaxed and
Relaxed.
not stressing, etc.
Not stressing. Yeah. If you're stressing, then you get the weird stuff. Don't recommend it.
Yeah, it's not so much fun. The weird stuff's not so much fun.
That's a bad trip. It's a bad Mandela trip.
And this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because of course you've got having been at this since 94, you have a vastly expanded reference point of what's been going on.
Right.
Why 2015? Do you have?
Yeah.
Have you questioned that? Is there anything that you've looked into? Have you talked to anyone who's been able to kind of give you a baseline marker of saying that a theory?
Well, I feel like it's on schedule, because part of when I told you I was kicking and screaming in 94. It's like, I don't want to do this.
No, you can't make me.
I want to be normal. Oh my gosh. Oh boy. So I think when you recognize that it takes time. It took me 5 years to create the website and create that presence. I had to integrate this bizarre experience.
Absolutely.
And we all do. So I think this is on schedule, actually. I don't think there's anything to worry about. I think that we are the ones orchestrating it. The two theories I love the most as to what's behind the Mandela effect, my personal bias at the moment, and it could change, but what I really love is I like to see that quantum phenomena happens at every level. And we're seeing physicists are coming on to that too. Everybody's coming on board, so that's good. And my other favorite is the awakening of human consciousness, the evolution of human consciousness, to recognize that we're behind this. So if you're having, what I meant about I was joking about the bad trip, if you're freaking out, you're anxious, and you're running a lot of energy, and you're not grounded, I can't do that. I won't do that. I won't, because I've done that. Once you've done that a few times, like, I'm not doing that again.
Not going back there again. Yeah.
No, because that's, it's a bad trip. It's just weird stuff happens that's not fun, and a lot of it. So that for me is showing me, like, don't do that, because everything I'm thinking about and focusing on, it can start happening out there. What looks like, so we're not having a victim consciousness experience of life. No. And what's happening instead is that we are becoming real conscious creators on a huge worldwide global scale, and we're co-creating with others. So it's time to learn to play more nicely, to have integrity within ourselves. Don't try to go one up on someone else, because if you do that stuff, that's not good. Yeah.
I agree on that one fully. So 100th monkey syndrome, if you want to call it this, right? Is it one of those, can we look at it and just say, like, you get to a point where obviously you get consciousness as it expands and people are expanding their consciousness, and then all of a sudden you have a trigger. So for example, it could be one person puts out a show talking about the Berenstain Bears.
Right.
And it's enough for people to then recognize and go, and it gives them that moment of, when you have those moments, you all of a sudden start questioning, and you start being aware. You start looking around, and you start other things you don't ignore, because our senses are not really trustworthy.
And actually, no, they're not. But I want to jump on something before we lose it.
Yeah,
2015, and what's going on, 100th monkey, there's another factor, which I just thought of, and something did happen in 2015 that did not, I think some people talked about it, maybe it was I think I saw it in Time magazine. We hit the tipping point of the percentage of population of meditators in the United States of America hit 10% right around 2015.
Really?
Boom. Yeah, boom. That's a tipping point.
That's interesting.
Because
that is really interesting.
Because that is a tipping point. When you hit 10%, you're leveraging something.
Nice choice of word, leveraging something. I like that.
Yes.
Well, and this is it. So I wonder if it becomes like the snowball effect, where basically someone comes out and just does a video talking about things like Berenstain Bears, Sex and the City, and then, it's like, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on. and so on. And next thing you know, you have people, and it's not a matter of they are waking up to it. I don't really like the terminology waking up, but they become aware. And it sometimes takes that one trigger where you go, oh, no, wait, Berenstain Bears? No, I had those fucking books as a child. It was Berenstain Bears. And then they start looking. Curiosity, right? And they start looking, and then and they tell people. And then those people tell people, and then all of a sudden it's like a tidal wave.
Well, I would almost think so, except remember, I was here doing this in the 90s, and I can tell you firsthand what happens when I would tell people about this. They'd back away, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this. If people are not there, it's kind of like in the movie, when the character in the movie, and he first tries to explain to his wife, even though she saw it, Monopoly Man, the monocle, and the whole bit,
right?
She was just like, no,
exactly. Right.
No, I am not willing to have this conversation. And they shut down.
They totally shut down. They back away. They don't want to hear it. They want, like, let's go back to talking about the weather, even politics, anything.
Anything.
You know, so it's like, oh boy. So it wasn't like it was picked up on by my neighbors, by my family. No, not really. The only people, fortunately for the website, that saved my sanity for those 20 years, you know, all the time I've been waiting for you guys to show up.
Waiting for everyone else to catch up with us.
Well, now we do have traction. We've got enough people that know this is happening, that aren't going to go back. Best of all, we're asking questions. We're thinking.
Yes.
I think that's the key, you know, just to really keep looking deeper. Don't assume anything. And I think that is really important, so that when you're questioning your own beliefs, it can seem a little bit scary, terrifying, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this for a long time, that people make choices all through your life. You go through your whole life because you were born into a specific family with whether it's a religious background, a political background, a social background, etc. And you make all these choices. And then later on in life, when they find out, no, that was actually a really poor choice, you know, pick one of the terrible things that you do now, you know, like you ate gluten, oh my God, whatever it was. And then a lot of people they come head to head into that belief structure, that programming, and they will not go into it because they're afraid of what happens. They're afraid if you figure out this one piece is incorrect, that you believed your whole life was true, when that piece shatters, then there's other pieces that follow. And I think deep inside people get that. They don't want their reality questioned. They need that life is exactly as we were told it was. There's nothing to see here, just, you know. Right.
And part of that, the whole network of dynamics there, is that people equate to some degree their beliefs with their identity. And if they're doing that, then it makes it kind of dicey right there. And a lot of people do that. So with the 100th monkey tipping point, and can you just tell people? Not necessarily, because of this exact situation. Their identity is all tied up in their beliefs. And look, they can tell what we're doing. They see, like, oh, what you're going there. You're going there. You're talking about my beliefs. You know, it's terrifying. It's like, I can't go there. That's my identity. We have to leave that alone. Let's go back to anything else.
And well, it's that deeper programming. And we tend to think about the programming from the simplest sense of just things like religion, politics, societal programming of, depending on what country you're from, how society expects you to act normal. But there's the deeper programming, and that like right down to the foundation of what is reality, what is this existence, and that terrifies people.
But it does not terrify the meditators. And that's the tipping point. That was the 10%. And that's the difference between identity is belief or identity is awareness. And it's the awareness that people recognize once they've started meditating, or if they've had a near-death experience or lucid dream, you know, all these things. But any of those exceptional human experiences can activate the sense of my identity is my awareness, It's not these beliefs that I grew up with, or they told me what it was, what truth was, what reality is. And
Hold on,
from
I have
there,
a dog trying to jump on my lap. No, go lay down. Go lay down. Go lay down. No, you're not coming on my lap right now. Go lay down. Sorry. My 100-pound dog wants to be my lap dog right now. No, not right now. Go on, love. Sorry.
So I'm just tying together the idea of that 100th monkey, the tipping point, 2015. And for the majority of people, when we're raised, we're told, we sort of identify ourselves with the beliefs that we grew up with. So our identity is all wrapped up in that. The only way that I know out of that, besides near-death experience, which I don't recommend, don't seek that out, don't look for it.
No.
Lucid dreaming can work, and meditation can work. Those two are good. And in other words, high reward, low risk. And those can show you that your identity is not your beliefs, that your beliefs are malleable. You can choose those. You can actually play with your beliefs. And it's your awareness that is much more the truth of your identity. So that's the key, as I see it from having looked at this.
It's really, really interesting how our beliefs can so shape your reality.
Very much so.
And then all of a sudden, if a belief gets knocked down, and I've had a lot of people who have had NDAs, near-death experiences, NDEs, and it's shaken their reality because all of a sudden a belief that they held has become shattered. Do you know what I'm saying? And then they will come to this place of like, now I have to rediscover who I am, minus all the belief structures, religion, whatever it is, that I've assumed was me.
Right. And that can be shattering, or it can also be cathartic. Sometimes a little bit of both.
Yes. Where do you see it going? Where do you see it going? And I come from that because this year especially has just been on an escalating, exponential Mandela effects, what the fuck effects, Toto effects, whatever you want to call them, is now just exploding into people's realities. And it's not just something that's happened on an internet show. It's things that are happening in your life.
Right.
And those are just skyrocketing. Where do you think it's going?
Oh, I'm working on a new book. I've only worked on it for 1 month. It looks like a book. It is that thick. It's 233 pages. This Mandela Effect Society, it's about us. It's about what I call, what some of us call the Great Awakening. And it's a manual for that. It's the history, the science.
Nice.
Yeah. Because I think it's time for us to take a look at that. Where do we want it to go? And
exactly, yes.
We hear a lot of terrors, scary things about what's going on with the world. But the indigenous peoples of the world have known for a long time that the ones who are dreaming this reality together with the earth are going to hand it over to the next generation. That's us. So we're the ones that are going to take on spaceship Earth and steer it. And we're able to do that. We're able to do it because we're able to consciously create. You may notice a lot of these Mandela effects are positive. Like the heart is now in the center, so you can do blood pressure on either arm. Kidneys are protected. There are lots of things going on that you could say are pretty positive. And when we recognize that's happened, and we're getting continents moving, some people say we're in a different part of the galaxy, the Milky Way. Yeah. So if that can happen like that, then pretty much any problem can also be solved like that. So we can get into that mode. You may wonder, well, how do we do that? How do we pull this together? That's where it helps to know the connection between what we're learning from quantum physics, such as the quantum Zeno effect. That's a way to kind of lock in and keep something focused. There are other things you can bring in, the awareness of superposition of states. You can play with what we call flip-flops in our community.
Yeah.
You can flip, you can see something and see a situation in your personal life and learn, don't get panicky. Like Douglas Adams would say, don't panic. You don't have to panic because you can flip-flop it back to the other way. And so we're learning. We're kind of like in the sandbox preschool, and we're learning to play nicely with friends. We're learning not to steal their toys.
I like that. I like that. We're learning to play nicely with friends, and it's funny because I was ranting just 2 weeks ago on one of the shows about the amount of stuff in my house just keeps disappearing, or moving, or changing, etc. And I was joking and saying I went to go. I was actually just before we did the show on December 2nd. I went to go pull out one of my rings out of my jewelry box and went, "Where's my ring?" And it's just an amethyst, and I like it. It's just got a really pretty colored amethyst, and I just was going to wear it, and it was gone. And I went, "Oh well, maybe I took it with me to Spain. I haven't really unpacked shit." No, it's gone. So then over the course of the next 2 days, I literally searched every place it could possibly be. Tonight, I'm getting dressed. I put on a set of earrings. I look down in my box, and there's my amethyst ring. And I just looked at it, and I just smiled. I was just like, of course it's back, and it's exactly where it's supposed to be. It's not just back and found it like in like, I don't know, in the kitchen cupboard. No, it's exactly where it's supposed to be. Perfect. And I just smile because you just go, okay, it's just yet again just another confirmation, if you will, confirmation how. And that's I kind of wonder if we're playing games with ourselves.
We are.
With children, you teach through games and through play. And you make up a little game to teach them about, shapes and sizes and stuff. Have we created this game for ourselves?
It's educational too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can play with time travel like you did with driving into Mallorca and having that wonderful experience. You can play with bilocation. So you can actually be in a couple places at once. What you're daydreaming about, you can experience. You can have effects there. I've done that a couple of times, and it's kind of fun. From my point of view, I'm just daydreaming. This even happened at the conference I just came from. I talked about it in my talk, and then it happened at the conference. So yeah, I think we're ready for it. We're ready for this stuff. We're ready to play with it.
I need to learn to biolocate. Up to and help me. I'll biolocate over to Ireland to come visit you. We'll see if we can work on that biolocating thing. It would be nice.
And then step after bilocation is teleportation. It's kind of like you're daydreaming it, and then boom, you're there.
Yep.
There were kids doing this in Italy that I wrote about in Quantum Jumps. It's in the book. This happened. Yeah. So this is, I think it's all within reach. And when you wonder, where is this going? It's going great places. So we're about to have a lot of fun.
I like to think so. It's confusing. It's there are days when you're just like, okay, is there a meaning to this one, or was this just another playtime lesson? Do you know what I'm saying? Is like, or is there an actual meaning behind this one?
Well, I don't think there's any noise. What I mean is I think there's meaning behind everything, but you might not realize it right away. And it might take more than just you to figure it out. You might have to make other friends play more nicely. And then they'll share with you why that happened. And you're like, oh, whoa. But you might not get it on your own. So it's kind of like we need to learn to play together, be part of a group and a community.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think, for example, when we were in Spain and we somehow did this little time jump, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't like, I'm bored, I just want to get there. No, it was like, I had my two little dudes in the back seat with me, and one is asleep and he's falling on my shoulder, and my other guy, and they've had a long day of traveling and they were tired. I was just like, they just need to get to the hotel so I can put them into a proper bed and get them to sleep. And I'm just like, so I don't know, sometimes taking the you out of the experiment, and when you focus on for other reasons, that makes it a little easier.
I think what you're saying is when we feel like we're really in service, and that's a genuine need, because then like, this matters. It matters for my kids. They need to get to bed. It's real. So it's not just me being selfish, like I want.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all very fine and dandy to be like, look, I'm got my hot coffee here, and I just want to get to where I can sit down and have a smoke and chill. There's I don't know. I think there's more to it when we talk about it on that level, and I think it comes from a deeper level.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's like a sense of higher self or future self or cosmos, the way that we connect on those levels going up. Because a lot of people talk about non-duality, but actually, when you look at it that way, there's always going to be levels, because there's the whole cosmos, and then there's some version of little me. But each of us is much bigger than fits in our little body. And you might think, like, and I think that's been proven, like we only use a certain small percentage of our brain. But we've got all these other we're imagining things all the time. And quantum consciousness, quantum cognition is all about that quantum process of exploring those possibilities. We're casting our net pretty wide. It's out there. And we're imagining all those possible selves. So those they kind of exist in the sense that we know that they're there. And that's where a lot of our mentality and cognition are. That's kind of spread out. So the truth of who we are is consciousness. It's not the physical body. That's part of this whole bigger. We've got lots of physical bodies.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
And people notice it when their tattoo moves, or things instantaneously heal. It's like, how did that happen?
Or instantaneously get worse. This is our joke, and we've just you wake up in the morning and you're like, what the actual fuck happened? Who beat me while I was sleeping last night? Because we have physical changes like that. I woke up, and it would have been in 2016, and you sit there, you get up in the morning, you're brushing your teeth, and you're looking in the mirror, and the sunlight was coming in just a strange way in the window, and I had a dent in my forehead.
What?
And I literally went, and you step back from the light, and then you go back to the light, and then just like, get one of the kids, get my glasses. Go get my glasses quick. And you just like to verify, and I call my husband, and I'm like, there's a dent in my forehead, and I can still feel it to this day, and it's just a very hairline dent, and it goes right there, and it just appeared. And you sit there and you go, whose body am I? Did my consciousness slide into Danny 482B, and it just so happened that she got hit in the head with, like, I don't know, a brick when she was 5 years old? I don't know. Like, you have these questions. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I just don't know.
That is very strange. I don't know either. There are some certain mysteries, but like I said, if you talk to other people, and it'll probably be cleared up at some point, and then you'll have an understanding. I don't know when.
Some point down the road. Well, this is like the group that we have with us tonight, live here with us in Zoom. And I will open the floor to like questions, guys, in a little bit, very soon. We talk all the time. This is like my crew. This is my family, and we get together once a week and we talk, and it's no holds barred. We throw your shit on the table and let's stir it up and see what we can figure out. And I think it's exactly when people are bringing all their perspectives to the table. Yes. It broadens your own perspective, but it also gives you that as you have a little bit of confirmation that you're not crazy.
It's a good thing.
And that helps you loosen up. Loosen up? Yeah. Is that a good way of putting it? Like you get rid of fear, you get rid of anxiety, you get rid of what? When you realize that people are going through this as well, and you can all talk about your experiences, and that's that kind of like your tribe together, and that reinforces a lot of the, I want to say not necessarily the positive aspects, but reinforces the fact that you're not alone. And when you realize that, you can go forward more.
Right. You can be a little bit more courageous, have a little bit more fun. And if you're with friends that help you laugh, that's even better. I love that about you, Danny. You've got such a great sense of humor.
This crew, we do a lot of laughing. Oh my God, we do a lot of laughing.
Excellent.
sometimes it's all you can do, right? Like sometimes you just have to laugh.
You have to. That's right.
Things go. I was joking about it. I said I was trying to render one of the videos from last week, and the whole program went like this, and I was just like, okay, start again. Okay, what are you gonna do? You just know that's what technology is doing right now. Technology is just completely losing the plot everywhere. And it's kind of, again, interesting when we look at our reality is doing this.
Yes.
And it's like the hard base realities stuff, like this computer here next to me can't keep up. And it's like technology is really twitching out now.
It is. And we're gonna see a lot more of that. I ordered something through that was being shipped through FedEx, and I was getting those email notifications, and it was getting to the point where the package should have arrived, but it wasn't there. One day I looked at, I got 4 emails about the same package. Like 3 of them said it had arrived, which it had not. So that's bad news. And then one said it's on the way. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go with the one that says it's on the way. Why did I get 4? But this happens to me all the time. I mean, I've done lots of things, and they go into superpositions of states. Electronics.
And I was just going to say, but is that not the perfect example of superpositions of states?
Absolutely.
Yes. The package is here, but it's not.
So I know what to do. I'm going to pick the one that hasn't been delivered yet, because the other ones all got stolen or something. I don't know.
Got eaten by an alligator. I don't know. They just disappeared.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Oh, that's too funny. No, but I hadn't thought about that. That's really interesting, because I've actually had a few things like that happen to me recently. Just yesterday, with like an Amazon account, when I got these notices, and I'm like, what the? No, I do not consent. And then I woke up this morning and went and checked my emails, and literally a half an hour after I got the first notice, I got a second notice basically saying, just ignore the first notice, it's all fine.
Yes.
I was like, that's right, it's all fine.
That's how you do it. That's right. And so that's the whole thing of don't panic. It's recognize when things flip-flop, they will. When they superposition in lots of different states, pick your favorite. And you can change the past. So, there's a lot of freedom that we're getting into. Once you start experiencing the Mandela effect, you can have a lot of fun. And, always keep that sense of humor. If it seems like it's still going wrong, quote unquote wrong, take a look later and see, like, maybe that wasn't wrong. So you just want to stay playful with it.
Well, isn't that kind of a lot? It's kind of a way of looking at life in general. Like, there's a lot of shit that happens to people that is horrific and terrible and stressful, etc. That I know myself personally, and then I can look back years later and go, but look what came out of that.
Yes.
And you can look at where you've come from, the steps that you got there, and go, but see what came out of that. And I would not be where I am today if it hadn't been for that event.
Right.
Reality is fucked up. Seriously fucked up. So I'm going to open up the floor, guys. If you guys want to ask any questions, you want to call it out in the chat or unmute if you have something that you want to ask Cynthia about specifically. Nancy's got her hand up right away. Hit me, Nancy.
Hi, Cynthia. I've read both your books. They're phenomenal. I read the first one in 2012 when we were around the 2012 questioning what was happening around that time.
Good.
So you really opened up my eyes. And then, like everybody else, it really came into focus in 2015. I just want to throw a thought out there. What if humanity, this is our next step in evolution, for lack of a better word, I'm using the word evolution, but it's like you said earlier about children playing games, and this is our little building blocks to learn how to manifest and consciously co-create a reality. Because until we reached a certain maturity point, could you imagine, you can't control your thoughts sometimes when you go to bed. Could you imagine if we all had this instant manifestation going on? Our world would be chaos. So what do you think about that idea, that this is our baby steps into evolving into that conscious awareness and co-creating and things like that?
I totally agree with it based on my own personal experiences. So I quickly learned that when I would have negative thoughts about people, they would manifest, and I don't want that happening. Even, okay, the example is I'd listen to music. If you've read my books, I may have mentioned this in one of them, can't remember now, but I would go to the place called the Victorian, and musicians would jam, and they'd play their different instruments. One of the musicians was playing Mustang Sally, and he struck me as a misogynist. And I thought, how dare he sing this song in that way? And I didn't realize I was having those thoughts. But the next thing I know, this poor man has like laryngitis of such a severe state that he might not be able to speak again. And then I thought, whoa. Because I had been really upset about that, righteously, I'm feeling righteously indignant, like how dare he, because he's putting women down, and that I could tell what he was doing, like, don't do that. So, but then I realized, oh my gosh, what if I did that? So I need to let it go and just send good thoughts, even it's his path, his journey, not up to me to take his voice away. Good heavens. That's not something, I'm not mean that way, and I wouldn't want to live in a world where that was happening. That did occur to me. I thought, what if we're having this awakening and all of us are getting these abilities? We really need to be a kinder, gentler community, even when we don't agree.
Kinder, gentler community. Yes.
Thank you. And you know what, perhaps that tipping point, that 10% of people meditating, is showing the maturity of the human race, or whatever exactly we are. And so now we've reached that tipping point. So now we're getting our little experiences to show us that this is a possibility, that we can do this, and we'll do it in a kinder, gentler way.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you know what? And I hate using buzzwords, but we talk about service to self, service to others. And right. you mentioned it just a little bit ago. So if we're talking about, like that whole thing of if all of a sudden everyone who's got that service to self mindset is all of a sudden like, I don't know, manifesting Ferraris all over the planet, but if you have that tilt, like you say, where all of a sudden you have a mindset of people more service to others, it allows for collective manifestation, if you will.
That's what we're doing. That's what the Mandela effect is. It's collective manifestation on a global scale. It looks a little random, looks a little crazy, but
a lot random, a lot crazy. Okay. Earl, did you want to ask something?
Hi. Yeah. Hey, Cynthia.
Hi.
So I was watching the whole interview with you and Marlene, everyone there for the Mandela Effect movie. Yes. So I'm listening because I'm playing a game, listening to everyone talk. So I hear Brian McFarlane.
Yes.
So I'm like, I'll just see what's going on. I look, it doesn't look like him. It sounds like him, but it does not look like the Brian McFarlane I remember seeing.
Wow.
Hairline's different, eyebrows, body type.
And you're not mixing him up with someone else?
No.
Okay, because
we'll have to send Brian a message and let him know.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, because your hair and your hairline, that doesn't change like when you gain weight. Like,
no.
But
he looks like the same guy, kind of. Like,
not at all. Not at all. The voice is the same, but the body is not. Like, that's the first time I've come across where someone had the same voice that you remember them having,
right?
But the body type is different. The look is different. I've even come across where I've seen in videos where people's hair color has changed. And I know what you're probably thinking. Well, probably they died, but the two I've seen were like two little young kids, like maybe around 4, 5, somewhere around there. You know,
Right.
yeah. So I'm seeing things.
Reality is strange.
It is so strange. I don't doubt you, because I've seen really weird stuff. I've walked down this, on a walk around my house, and I've seen people. I look away, look back, and it's different people. There's a baby stroller, a baby, a dog, and it's like they're different, and that just happened in a moment. So I do believe you. I believe you.
Yep.
I just think it's weird.
It is. Anyway, I gotta go eat. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye, Earl. Zero, do you got a question? I see your hand up. Zero, are you there? Aaron? No, Aaron's not there. He was there, but he's apparently, or he's having technical difficulties.
Oh.
I can't tell. Might be.
Yeah, probably.
And 1 sec, he's fighting with his mic. He's like, I'm trying. Well, this is it. Like, I love watching. Oh, there. Wait. Hey, Zero.
Hey, sorry. Didn't realize my webcam isn't plugged in because I don't leave it plugged in. So I'm really excited that you're talking about quantum experimentation on the macro scale, because I feel like I hardly hear people talk about that aspect of it. I feel like that's the natural next step. Like, I mean, you hear about the observer effect, you hear about the observer effect plus their expectation effect. Like, you hear about past research that have been shown on, on the micro scale. And I'm interested in discussing with your expertise, like, what the future possibilities are, how that quantum experimentation looks like in a daily life, how you incorporate those practices either with yourself or with other people. I find that to be, and I'd love to hear that perspective of how to go about doing that from somebody who's as well researched as you.
Okay, well, I'm glad you started with the ones people know about, the observer effect and the, what was the other one? The expectation. Expectation, yeah.
Like, it's also the observer's expectation that influences it too.
Right, and so the other ones that you can start playing with are, I was using some of the terminology that the Mandela effect community uses, like flip-flop. We know flip-flop. What we don't tend to recognize is that you're playing with a couple of quantum effects when you're getting, if you really get good at the flip-flop, like you can see it go back, forth, like, wow, this is not just one flip-flop. I'm really seeing a lot of them. And it works best if it's just a personal Mandela effect, something that you don't have the whole world also involved with, because you're going to be able to play with it a little bit more just on the sides with, just to notice. For example, my neighbor's roof had a leaf guard for a while. And this was at the same time that our family dog had cataracts, or it looked like that. And so, but then it would flip. I would realize I love our dog. We don't want the dog to have have cataracts. So the dog's cataracts would go away, because the dog would be in a superposition of states, and then I could quantum Zeno effect and lock in the expectation of the dog without the cataracts. And then it was a simple matter. Each family member would come to me, bad news about the dog. What is it? And we'd go through the whole thing. Like, no worries, we're doing a flip-flop, quantum Zeno, lock it in thing. So sometimes it looks like the dog has cataracts, but he doesn't. But we just need to love the dog and recognize that he doesn't. So he lived out the rest of his lives with no visual problems at all. But because it was flip-flopping, and we got the chance to each of us individually go through that, we were playing with the superposition of states, which is a quantum phenomenon, but we're seeing it in real life. And then we're also witnessing that we can play with the quantum Zeno effect to choose the preferred flip-flop side that you would like to lock in. Bring a lot of
lock in.
Yeah,
Yes.
lock it in. Lock it in by observing it. Like, I see this dog has clear vision. And simultaneously, we were getting a flip-flop going on with the leaf guard on the roof next door, which is interesting. I don't think that they're always linked like that, but sometimes you might notice that you're in a window of time when you're seeing flip-flops happening more.
Yes.
Take advantage of it. Because if you're in one of those 48-hour windows, then you're in a sweet spot. That's kind of like, let's do this.
It does seem to come in, I call them like waves, where it's
Yeah.
a wave comes through and all of a sudden you'll have multiple things over the course of, like you say, a day or two, and then kind of calms down a little bit. But yeah, that's interesting. It's like if you can recognize those days when you're, I don't know, when you're on it, you know, when it was like, okay, we're really on it today. Let's use this time to set that intent, set it like, you know, like, okay, let's put this in concrete. This is what we want as the outcome.
And I like the way you mentioned it's kind of like a wave, because it's quantum wave. It's kind of, you're in that state where it's all possibility. You're not into the collapsed, observed, special state of material reality. Because that's a very special case.
Thank you.
You want to be in the wave, because then you can access all the other special case material realities that are all around. And you can feel them. And there are some days when you can really feel them. You can feel that you're in that. Usually it is like a 48-hour window, 2 days.
Oh, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the collapsed waveform, when it collapses, like you say, it becomes more fixed.
Right.
Almost like the observation has already happened. The intention has been there, but if we can catch it in the waveform, it's like your email, right? Your package is there, it's not there, it's been delivered, it hasn't been delivered. Oh, there's your moment. Pick the one. It's on its way.
Yeah, don't panic. And even if it looks like something's already happened, we change the past too. Another fun thing to play with is retrocausality. We do it anytime we get an instantaneous remission from cancer, a broken bone, whatever. We're basically playing with time. We're kind of jumping to a different, I don't use the word timeline, but people do. So, you know, we're jumping to another, so I can jump to another so-called timeline, but time is not linear. You know, time is much more than linear.
No. And I think if we ever needed proof that time is not linear, this last few years has been like this screaming example.
Right.
That the concept of linear time is merely a line drawn on a chalkboard, and that's it.
Absolutely. It's a simplification, so we can kind of feel like we kind of know what's happening, so we can feel confident, even though
we all have an agreed upon, you know what, it's like 7 days from now we're all going to have a Christmas tree and we're all going to do this one thing together at this time, but it's an agreed upon frame. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Sony.
Can I just add one tiny little comment?
Go ahead, Cyril.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your personal stories and how that works, because, I mean, humans are wired for story. And I feel like that helps understand how that works. Like, for example, it kind of feels like, you know, let's say I've read all about basketball, right? I've thought about practicing it myself, but there's just something about watching somebody who's on the court, who's an expert at it, who's in their flow, and getting in their thought process and seeing how that works, that really helps to bring it down to a digestible level that's like, okay, I know what to do.
Yes.
I know it's possible.
It is possible.
Exactly. I know it's possible.
Thank you, Zero.
And just to know what that looks like, you know, what practicing even looks like.
Yeah. That's right.
Yep. I agree.
Thank you.
Sony, you got your hand up?
Hi, thank you, Cynthia, for being here. I love everything you're saying. It's very on point and makes sense. I have two questions that are kind of different, though. First of all, I'm a Berkeley alum like you and wanted to know when you were there, because we could have been together. And number two is, did you ever feel anything strange with the accelerator and the physics lab and the laboratory there at Berkeley?
Okay. I was there from 1980 to 1982. And I got my physics degree in those years. I was
81, 84. Okay.
So there you go. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. There were 6 of us in the physics, 6 women in the physics department. 6 total. 6. I've seen one of the others on an airplane once. We randomly sat next to each other. And I was a total introvert. I never talked to anybody.
I was the same.
Yeah. Were you in the physics department?
No, I was environmental design, but I had to take
Wow.
a lot of physics courses for this.
Absolutely, yeah. But of the majors, there just weren't that many women majoring in it. So congratulations for surviving Berkeley. Yay.
No, don't pat me on the back. I still have PS, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sorry. It's like the paper chase. Very intense university.
I bet.
So,
Did you ever notice strange things with all
Okay.
the, yeah.
Right. Okay. The other part of the question. Well, I did not, I did actually work later at the Space Sciences Laboratory. I was tracking solar flare data, looking at the.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I was working with a satellite, running these punch card programs. We had a computer that we would bootstrap. I'd pull on the Mylar tape and it would start it up, and then it would receive information from the satellite. That satellite is still up there. It was in an orbit exactly balanced between the Earth and the Sun. So it's kind of cool. The ICC-3 satellite, but it's gone offline. I think it's still, well, never mind. But back to your question, I did not really notice anything particularly weird about the equipment there because I was there. That was Space Sciences Laboratories where all that stuff is going on. But
or atmosphere, or the good old boys club, or just some more of that kind of stuff.
Well, there was good old boys club all over the place. That's what it was all about. But what do you mean weird? To me, it was just the way it was.
Did you ever I always had very strange feelings about the campus in general, always just never felt right to me. And then since we're mentioning that you were in the physics department, and now everything you just said,
right.
So awesome, interesting. But wonder if you ever picked up on anything or knew of things that the rest of the populace didn't know, or things like that.
Well, the stuff I know that most people don't know is I'm friends with a lot of the hippies who saved physics. They started that group there on the campus. I wasn't part of it then, but I became part of it later. So the originators of that group would be George Weissman. I co-authored a paper with him on we were talking about the whole thing about objective reality not being real, and it's all subjective. And that is the quantum paradigm. So we wrote about that before the experimental evidence proved us correct in 2019.
Nice.
And the other hippies who say physics, I know them. So I know the good side I don't know the shadow dark stuff, but I know the good ones, the ones who wanted to. Yeah. So I'm friends with those guys.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, Mercedes. Are you there, Mercedes?
Yes, I am. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you, love.
Good. To the last answer you had, I immediately reminded me of what you were talking about at the beginning, that this was, as you worked daily at this department in the university, it was your focus. So you might not recognize it. It wasn't in your periphery.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was just noticing what I was noticing.
Yeah. And my question was more to what you said later about the tipping point with meditation, and I remember I always was a very meditative child did it always without knowing what it was. They called it back then daydreamer.
Yeah, yes, me too.
So and I thought, I also was always questioning. Even in the congregation I wasn't very well seen because I always questioned. I wasn't programmable. So I think it might be connected, that if we are meditative, we are more aware, more
Absolutely. For sure. Yes.
Maybe more open. Open
and
to
open.
No, she's
Yeah.
actually correct, because I didn't get into it, but Leibniz, the philosopher, talks about consciousness, the definition of it. He's one of the creators of calculus, and Leibniz, when Newton is the other one, but we use the Leibnizian notation and so forth. So when you do a calculation with calculus, you're using the Leibnizian format. He also created the pillars of science, but never mind all that. The point that Leibniz brought up that I want to connect to, that you're talking about right now, when you meditate, you're gaining awareness that you can observe the one who's having those experiences. The moment you do that, you're observing the awareness. You're aware of the awareness. You've got a level of consciousness that is consciousness. When you're aware that you're aware, boom, there you go. So yes, when you meditate, that's the key. Then you've already started rising out of the beliefs, and the fact that you're daydreaming and meditating definitely means that you are aware, even as a child. Yeah.
Yes, I remember me staring at my hand and wondering how it looks like, and that it's me, and thinking about I'm having a body. It's like a strange thought. I was in a space where to have a body felt strange. And to
It's
be
like, this is a solid thing, and this is mine, and it's attached to me, and I can control it.
Yes.
Yes. And that's really good, because then you're back to that beginner's mind. It's just like the brand new consciousness when you're first born. It's kind of like the goal of a lot of meditation is to get back to that because then you're free of the beliefs, and you're wide open. You're back at you're at the gateway of perception, so you're capable of being in that possibility, that wave function of all possibility, all reality, just pure consciousness.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Mercedes. Oh, sorry, go ahead, hon.
I also think perhaps in this group there are many who are very questioning and open, and that I have kind of the feeling that many were already in early childhood a little bit like that, and always questioning, and though they might not have the possibility to express it because they might have been in a certain belief structure that they couldn't, they still couldn't agree to everything and were open, basically.
Right. That's a really good observation.
Well, I mean, we know this, like, we hear incredible stories about children who can do incredible things. Kind of like you mentioned in Italy, like biolocation, stuff like this. And it's that before they've been told they can't do it.
Right.
We tend to tell children, no, you can't fly. No, you can't run on water. No, you can't. Programming into what they can't do. And children, when they're young, they don't have the limitations that we do, the programming, the belief structures, because that comes in real early. I mean, it really does, especially these days when children are sent off to school and daycares at like ridiculously young ages.
Yes. Well, when I was quite young, it's funny you bring this up. I was about 5 years old, and I noticed that it was raining outside, and I could look out the window in our living room at the rain. And if I thought stop rain, it would instantly stop. And I'd think start rain, it would start, stop, it would stop, start. So I'm going back and forth like that. And it was so consistent. I thought, I got to show my mom. So I ran to go get her. She was in her bedroom. We look out her window. But the look on her face, that should have told me, but I didn't know yet what that meant. It was that look that we've all seen, who experienced Mandela effects. Yeah, it was that look. Kind of like, what are you bothering you for? What is this? And I tell her, and she's like, oh, okay. And I thought, oh, boy. And so it didn't work.
that funny?
Yeah. And so later in life, I again attained that state of mind after the Kundalini experience, and I'm able to start rain and stop rain. But now, this is the funny thing: there's a delay, and I thought, well, there was no delay when I was a kid. You know, I was better at it then because I'd think stop, and then you'd wait. I'm like, oh my gosh, my little rational analytical mind is stopping it at the cloud. As a child, I knew how to start.
No,
and stop.
it was just stop.
Yeah, so I'd have a retrocausal effect that would stop and start before I'd even say stop and start, before I'd even think it, because it would have already happened, you see.
It's because time isn't linear, and
I was better at it. Yeah, I was better as a kid.
And that's kind of the program. Some of that programming, right, is like,
yeah,
to children, it just is.
Right.
Things just are.
Right.
The rain is in front of them. They're not thinking about, well, the clouds are 34,000 feet up, and then if the gravity pulls it this way, to therefore it'll take this amount of time for the water to hit the. There is it is. It's rain or it's sun, and there is no structured belief around it. So therefore, why can't it be changed?
That's right. And I was able to get back to it when I realized what was happening. I thought, oh, I knew how to do this as a kid. I had that beginner's mind, which I was reminded of with our last comment, because that's so beautiful what she was saying.
Yeah,
just to look at your hand and say, like, wow, this is a hand. I'm in a body. It's kind of like that. To get back to that, you can do anything when you're in that state.
Nice. Exactly. Hi, Penny. Did you get a question too?
Yes, I do. Hi, everyone. And Cynthia, I think you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
I noticed the other day, this is kind of an observation with a ethical and moral question. Okay.
Yes.
I went out on the front porch. It was at night and it was cold. And I noticed that the neighbor's dog that's across the street was out in the back doing the cold bark, how they do when they're cold. And I was like, why isn't he bringing that dog in? Okay, well, the couple of times going out, this happened over a few hours. The second time I was outside, I got up and I was like, you know what? Whoa, wait a minute. I control my reality. Right. So why am I allowing this to happen? That dog is cold and needs to come inside. So on the third time I went out to smoke a cigarette, I saw him open the door. Now, remember, it's cold, so he had it just a crack, but I could see him, okay? And he was smoking a cigarette out the crack of this door. And I was like, your dog needs to come inside. This is just a very, very matter-of-fact thought. She needs to come inside. Okay. 5 minutes later, and I just stayed out there. I heard her doing the because she knew someone, right? That happy, yay. Didn't hear her after that. Okay, so I assume he let her in. Now, this goes to when you were listening to the band. Okay, and you saw him as,
right.
You know, this is imposing, okay? Even because when I walked back inside, even though I was happy the dog was allowed to come inside, that hit me as a moral and ethical. I imposed. You know, we're doing all this manifestation and all this experimenting and things like that. That was imposed. because I do know the routine is they got her as a pup and oh, it was all great. And now she's kicked outside because she's grown, you know, and now she's basically an outside dog. So I knew that that was a pattern. They don't bring her in that much.
Right.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I can see it as, oh, yeah, that's great. And I'm sure people were like, put a smile on their face. Oh, yay, the dog went inside. But is that morally and ethically right?
Well, once you involve several parties, you got the dog, you got the person, there's you, then what's ethical, it becomes more of a group, collective awareness of what's optimal. And there are always more factors than any one of us can ever know. So even though it may seem like one thing to one of us, I don't know what was going on there, but
Observer, right?
that can be a lot more going on, and you never know. What's happening inside the house might be a disaster, and maybe it's better. I don't know. So you never know. But
well, Danny, I'm sorry, but Danny just kind of nailed it, because I stepped out of the observer role.
right.
Okay, and when do we do that? When is it? I'm just seeing a lot in going on Earth, right? That there's moral and ethical conundrums.
But what I was meaning, Penny, when I said the observer is, in your reality, you went and saw him, or you assume that the dog went inside, but maybe in his reality that didn't happen. Maybe in his reality, the dog didn't come inside and stayed outside. That's what I meant by the observer, right? Like,
That's true.
Now we're talking about kind of like that quantum field effect of, like, you know, two different observers saw two different things.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know. So I get what you're saying about the moral conundrum of it. Like, and I would say, yeah, I would have an issue if we were trying to put our will over on someone else. But at the same time, is you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And we don't know what the situation is with that person or the dog or the neighbor on the other side of them. We just don't know. Who knows what they observed themselves?
Yeah, it's hard to guess. One reason I like to ask how good can it get, I let that be my guiding intention. So it's for the best for all concerned. It's how good can it get for, not just for me. That's no good. That's no good.
Yep.
So.
Interesting. Thank you, Penny. That was a good question. Nancy's got her hand up again.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment, then I'll ask my question. What I really love about this dialogue about reality shifts is I remember the panel last week or 2 weeks ago when you guys had the director on of the film.
Right.
And everybody came from different backgrounds. There was some Christian people there, and there was other different, but what was so beautiful was everybody came together to discuss what we have in common, which is figuring this out instead of focusing on our differences, like the social conditioning is having us focus on right now, right, with all the division, right? So it's just such a beautiful thing to see everybody come together to figure it out, whether you're coming from the Bible perspective and looking at the changes there. It's brought everybody together. So my question is related to the movie. In the movie, they presented the simulation theory, and I was wondering what you think about the simulation theory. I mean, we are discussing the various different causes, so there's another avenue to explore with that. I was just curious if you had an opinion on that, whether it's something you don't prefer to think about from that perspective, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'm interested in all of the different theories, and that's one of the top runner ones. Once people get past that people are confabulating and that there's false memory syndrome going on. So right after that one would come in simulation, and its proponents include Elon Musk and lots of other people that are scientific luminaries. So people might think that it's been really well thought out, but what I like to do is take a look at the theory and ask to me, a complete theory would show what's really causing this. And if you say that there's a simulation, whether it's a computer simulation or something beyond any computer we've ever seen, that's all right, whatever. But what is it simulating? What is the real reality? And who is doing the simulation? So if it doesn't answer those questions, then it's still turtles all the way down, which is it's the way the indigenous people said, this is Turtle Island. And when you say, well, what's this island Earth standing on? Well, it's another turtle. And then what's that turtle standing on? Another turtle. And you say, well, what's going on here? And then they say, it's turtles all the way down. And we haven't left turtles all the way down with simulation theory. So it's fun, it's flashy. It gives us something that we can look at because we love our computers and we're coming into quantum computing. I worked with computers. I've programmed in 5 or 6 different languages. So I do know about computer programming and information technology, but to me, it's got to be something much bigger than that that's happening. And when I ask what's behind all of that, well, consciousness would be, but then we're back to the old problem of what is consciousness? We don't know. So hasn't really.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good answer. That was a good answer. Thanks.
Well, and this is one of the things, because I refer to the simulation theory a lot because of the research. I put all theories on the table. I'm not willing to take any one theory off the table because the finer point of it is we really don't know. So you got to keep all the theories on the table. Otherwise, you start blocking out information that could be coming in. The one comment I always have about it is that a lot of people I find are either it is this or it is this, right? It is a religious thing, or it is AI, or it is quantum entanglement, or it is, and I don't think, for example, when we talk about, for example, the quantum mechanics, et cetera, that we are literally discussing, and the simulation theory, I don't think they preclude each other. And I do think that they could very well be basis points of each other, that it could work in such a way that, and for example, the quantum mechanics that we look at, even down to what we look like Maxwell Planck's things like these, there are defined parameters, if you will, in our reality, the pixels per se, that reality is made up of. That doesn't mean that the quantum aspect is not part of that.
Right.
And consciousness, of course, is part of all of it.
Right.
Regardless of all of it, it doesn't, that's, I find I've talked to a lot of people on this, and you get some people are, very, very tied to, for example, oh, it's CERN. Mandela effect, it's caused by CERN, or it's caused by the D wave, or it's caused by a Project Looking Glass, etc. This is another one that I'm revisiting at the moment.
Right.
But above and beyond all of that is consciousness. Consciousness comes into every variable and every aspect of it. So I don't feel that, like, for example, all the stuff that we're talking about tonight about the quantum aspect, the quantum entanglement, supersymmetry, all of it, I don't think that actually says that does not mean it's a simulation, because that could be part of the program that is the simulation. And perhaps part of the program, for me, when people talk about the simulation, and what you exactly said, why? What's the basis? Well, maybe the basis is exactly what we're doing right now, to wake up and move beyond it and realize and be able to move through it. And all the things that we have talked about tonight could very well be part of the experiment, if you will, in consciousness.
I'm just saying it has some questions to answer. So
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, otherwise we don't want it to look like turtles all the way down. So it needs we got some work to do. Because now it sounds just like turtles all the way down.
We got a lot of work to do. That is not even a question. But we ask the questions, and that's, to me, is the most important aspect, is to be able to keep asking the questions.
Exactly.
Right? Just keep asking the questions and looking at the pieces that come forward.
That's right.
It's all we can do at this point, really.
Yes. And you're doing a great job. I love how you're looking. I love the way you're so open-minded. And even though I saw that show where you're thinking, look, I've dismissed QAnon before. I don't want to go there, but I'm having a second look. Love that. Because then you're not letting your beliefs get in the way. You're recognizing, I'm going to be awareness, and let's take a look at it. Let's see what it is now. Because even though it looked kind of wonky before, now it's starting to, there's something here. Let's take a look. I love it.
Well, and that, I'm always trying to encourage people to do that, but it's like trying to find people who you can have those conversations with.
Right.
It's kind of difficult. And like, for example, that one point, the QAnon,
Yes.
as it pertains to that aspect of Looking Glass, the yellow cube, etc.,
Yes.
secret space program, I've put a call out now. I've contacted 3 different friends of mine who are heavily into the QAnon stuff. I put a call out publicly on PocketNet saying, all of you guys who are all big QAnon fans, can you recommend someone who is knowledgeable about that and Looking Glass as well, who can walk me through this? And I'm open. I'm like, sit down with me, walk me through this, because if I've missed these pieces, then I need to put them back on the table. So let's walk through it. I can't get anyone to come forward. I'm like, oh, and the one person who did was like, well, you don't like QAnon? I'm like, dude, I just said I want to talk about this. So it's not about me going on a bashing. I just want someone who can fill me in.
Okay, well, something about that, just so that you know, you're talking anon, you're talking military, you're talking protected. So just because you don't hear from them doesn't mean it's not there. So
no, exactly. Absolutely. No, I have enough of my own dealings with that realm back prior to 2012 to know.
Okay, you know.
Yeah. That's another whole ball of wax we're not even going to get into.
Let's not even go there. No.
Yeah.
Penny?
Yeah, Merce. Yes, hun.
I think why you didn't get an answer. The ones who are heavily into QAnon don't know a lot about the Looking Glass and aren't experts into this. But as they have followed it and got the proofs from the thread at 8kun and 4chan and so on, they see the possibilities of a Looking Glass device factual. You understand?
Yes, they do. Because they believe everything QAnon puts out. Is that what you're meaning? Or do you mean...
No. There are facts. In the thread of 8kun or before 8chan, Q put posts out seconds before Trump or anybody else put this almost to the point the same thread out, the same wordings, and that was kind of a proof for the members of the chat that he's really in contact with those people and knows stuff.
And that's what I want to find out.
And therefore also he talked also about future proofs past. So he put out many things which only came about a year later, you know, or even was further in the, and therefore
I don't know enough about it. That's my problem.
And therefore, as this Looking Glass, as he mentioned Looking Glass, everyone went, wow, that's for those who knew about Looking Glass. But those are not those channels on YouTube or other places who know about Looking Glass. I know about it, and you know about it, but I also don't follow too much about Q. I only am in a chat who talks about Q, and but I'm not too close. I'm not attached to it.
I'll find the information when I need to. That's my other whole thing. It was like, I just put it out there into the universe and be like, that's who I want to talk to. Someone just come my way. Come over here. Come talk to me. And it'll happen.
Perfect. Yeah.
Or it won't. Trust me, a lot of times. It will or it won't. Yeah.
That's just wait for the right time. It'll
Exactly.
happen.
Free will being what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Basi, you said you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, let's stay on the topic. What we just said about the QAnon stuff. I mean, I don't know how many people know these places like 8chan. I mean, I don't know that place very well.
No, I
but
don't.
like other places like 4chan where that stuff emerged, you know, people should be aware this is like shit posting central part, right?
Yeah.
But yet you find amazing intel there from people that drop amazing clues and whatnot there. So
it's the place. It's a good place to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So are you aware what memes are?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry to ask this question in this crazy world these days. So what do you think about them? I mean, yeah, there are these stupid memes about stupid stuff, but then you have also these memes that are designed to red pill, so to speak, people, right? Like to make them aware of something. And wouldn't you say that there is some form of, let's call it like Sheldrake called it, these morphic fields, right? They also interact as, if I'm not completely mistaken, into the fabric of quantum reality, right?
Yes, you can look at it that way. I think I love morphic fields, and I think the memes are a big way to shape consciousness.
Exactly. See, now you answered it already.
Yes.
So you believe that too, right? Like because the trolls have like a funny saying, like meme magic, right? Like this is the thing that they believe turned the tide into the Trump election, right? Like they were a massive part of the way he got elected because there were a bunch of people that were fed up, right? Created memes and tried to, let's say, shape reality through words and pictures and influence, exactly.
Right.
And another question, would you think that, I mean, in science, they talk about like the quantum universe, like making sure it is like not really part of this universe, but sort of
it's
treating
kind
it
of
like a
put
dimension.
There.
Yeah, it's treated like a dimension, sort of like a barrier. Like, let's say, if you're zooming down so much that you see the quantum field or the quantum stuff going on, then you are literally in a new dimension. But we still haven't had equation that puts it all together, right? But I have a feeling the more people become aware of the whole idea of quantums, right? Like the stuff beyond or below the atoms, the more these borders get fuzzier and fuzzier, right? Like one effect from the other side can bleed through the other sort of, in quote mark, dimension, right? And maybe even from our perspective, like the observer bleeds into that thing. So what the fuck are dimensions?
That's a good question. And we tend to think in 3 dimensions we can see that. So that's why we have timelines, because we simplify it down to make it flat, make it a 2-dimensional flat thing, small thing. But the truth is reality is much greater than that. If you look at string theory, we have 10 or 11 or more dimensions, and our little brains have trouble. They go snap when we try to comprehend it.
Yes, exactly.
It's a crazy topography.
Sorry to interrupt you, because I was annoying the unfuckers a few weeks ago about the idea of dimensions, right? You have like 3 dimensions, up, down, forwards, backwards, and left and right? Like if I imagine this like a space, like an aquarium, and then come up with the idea of time, like putting time in an empty container that is now the room, the space, why the fuck is time there? Time doesn't matter unless I have matter in there where time can interact with. Or like, I mean, I was like having brain farts, like the idea of maybe what is if heat itself is a dimension, right? A dimension can go up and down, right? Or forwards and backward. Heat gets cold and heat gets hot, right? You have ends
Temperature.
here at the cold. Yeah, at the temperature. At the end, you have a hard end where the absolute 0 point is, but you can go up like crazy into heat, like as hot as you want, basically. So how weird is all this stuff talking about dimensions, right? Like, because I think all the scientists say, oh, we have these small dimensions, but then you have these other scales. Like the dimension comes from the word scale, right? You have a dimension of a room. It is basically a scale. So why aren't things like heat or pressure sort of little dimensions? That is what drives me crazy lately.
Those are good questions. My big takeaway from you're talking about the blurring of that little line of demarcation between quantum and classical physics. What I'm noticing now is that line is gone. It's like that we've got quantum physicists saying that everything, including you and me and everything that's real and physical, exists in the superposition of states. That's what that says. When we have a majority of physicists saying that, is that they're acknowledging, even if we don't yet have a theory of everything, we know for sure that everything is quantum fundamentally. And when I look at the logic of it, then I see quantum physics is the main thing. It's a big game in town. That's the universal set. So it may be the realm of the so-called very small, but it runs everything. And you can derive all of reality, including quantum physics, from 6 simple postulates. What you get is a simplification is I think we're getting closer to it. I'm referring to the work of Matthew Leifer and Pusey, and they were at the Perimeter Institute, or Matthew Leifer was at the time. They wrote an article, No Return to Classical Reality. And I love that because they're getting into the heart of the fact that everything is intrinsically quantum. We may think it's small, but it runs the show. So I think we're getting closer to that theory of everything. I don't know when it's going to happen. As far as our conceptualization of all the dimensions go, I like to look at keys on a piano, because then I realize, like, okay, that's dimensional awareness, like keys on a piano, you can play them together. But it's really hard to see what this reality looks like as it really is, because we'd have to go to a mental mapping process that no human that I know of has yet managed.
We're talking about how do we comprehend beyond the senses that we use. Right. And that's when I watched a brilliant video that I absolutely loved, talking about dimensions mapped out into 11 dimensions. And it was well done. It came out, I think it was 2018. The explanation was well done, but then again, same type of thing, we still have this problem, is when you start talking into 10th and 11th dimensions, we realize that we don't have a fundamental ability to mentally picture that.
Right.
And that is, when we talk about quantum reality and we talk about what we picture, it can literally be how reality, I don't want to say is created, but how it can be expanded, how it can be used, so to speak. But we're limited by what we have the ability to perceive. And so when we talk about these other dimensions, all of a sudden we get to a way of, okay, well, how can you perceive that?
Our perceptions already are compressions. They're not even, we tend to think we trust our physical senses, but I love the work of Donald Hoffman. I had him on my Living the Quantum Dream podcast, and he writes books and talks about the fact that the way we map our perceptions of reality, including our vision and our smell and our taste and our touch and our hearing, all of those are very compressed, and they've all been reformulated. By the time we get the signal, we've processed it. It's not even what's out there.
No, exactly. We don't. When you realize that your brain only takes in, or let me say, the final picture that our brain has painted for us of that flash instance of whatever it is that you just observed is maybe 1%, maybe 5% of the actual data that you took in, but your brain had to literally compress it down into this one singular image and then give you all the data that supports that. But you're working on just that tiny a bit of data that you have.
Right. And it's not even necessarily an accurate, I mean, it's something, but it's probably lying in some way. And that's what these are the senses that people say, I just believe my senses, only what I touch, taste, smell, feel, see and hear. But that's not real. We know for sure that's not. So they're trusting something that's already not quite accurate, not really the best representation even of what's out there.
Well, when we did the conversation back on December 2nd, I tried to lead into that with the other people who are on the panel with us, and going back to Mandela effects,
right,
and how some people literally cannot see them.
Right.
And then you can have one. It can just be one that is some. I had a friend of mine who was a massive ABBA fan, like literally ABBA was his life, and he literally turned around and lost his shit because he all of a sudden found out there was an album of ABBA touring Mongolia. And he lost, I laughed because he lost his shit. He was just like, ABBA has never played in Mongolia. It didn't happen. And he found like a t-shirt, like a concert t-shirt someone was auctioning on eBay. And that moment was the moment that just shifted everything, because it was a fundamental moment for him where the two realities collided and did not. You could not make it work. You couldn't say misremembering because he knew. He couldn't, there was no other way of looking at it except of like, boom, this is two different, completely different things happened. And from that point, a lot of people, they need to have that one that smacks them upside the head, that then opens the doorway to all of a sudden perceiving the other things that are going on around them.
Right. Right. Well, that's good. It's good when that happens, because then we've got one more of us, one more person to talk to.
One more person to talk to. Okay. Guys, we hate to do this. We're at our 2-hour mark. I can't believe 2 hours has gone by already. Like, holy flying fuck on a stick. Holy shit.
Can I ask just a good closing question?
Okay, Zero, go ahead.
Really quick, I promise. I have it all written out. It's just, you know the quote by Niels Bohr, if quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet.
Right.
I just want to know what your thoughts are on the trajectory of the impact on reality as the public realizes these profound implications.
Oh, wow. Well, it's the same thing we've been going through. It starts with just shock, rejection. Often we just want to push back, like, this can't be happening. But I think eventually we'll get to that place that we started the show today talking about, where Danny just has so much enthusiasm, like, let's find out what's going on. And I think that's the most productive take on it. So I hope that's where humanity goes next. Hope we live up to our name, Homo sapiens, the wise humans, and let's be wise about it. Let's learn.
I like that. Let's be wise and let's learn, which means having an open mind.
Yes.
Because a closed mind does not take in information.
That's right.
Okay, that's it for us, guys. Cynthia, thank you so much for coming on. This was, you're going to have to come back again, because this is just kind of, more doors have just opened up, and there's going to be some more stuff that we're going to need to definitely throw on the table and discuss.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you were able to come on tonight. As an update to all the unfuckers out there, okay, next Wednesday's Christmas. There's no show. And the Wednesday after that is New Year's. There's no show. So, like I said, I talked about this on Sunday. What we're going to do is Sunday, December, I think it's the 29th, instead of doing movie night, we're going to just, all of us, we can get together and we'll just sit back and have one of our laid back chats, just to shoot the shit, throw whatever on the table sticks, and we'll see what we want to discuss. because God knows we can't go like 3 weeks without, you know, a show. So Sunday the 29th. So I won't see you Wednesday. Everyone, I hope you have a good holiday if that's what you're celebrating. If you're not, have a great time anyway. Try to block out all the Christmas music and stay away from shopping malls. It'll save your sanity. And I'll see everyone on the 29th. Thank you, Cynthia. If you want to hang out for a second.
Sure.
And we'll close off. We'll say goodnight to the live stream. Bye, guys out there on Twitch.
Bye.
Ciao.